Okay, let's move on to the second example that I wanted to do. So we've looked at draw circles already, and we did all that, the code for that in the previous example. We're going to move on to this next one called factors. And the aim here is to display all the factors for a number. So we're going to have some kind of number, and I'll just use a constant for the number. So we have some number such as 77, and we want to display all the factors of that number in the list box, like 11 and 7. Okay, so let's dive into that. So we can, this is the code up here from the previous example. I'm just going to ignore that. And we're going to start working on this second button factors click event. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is define the number. Okay, so I'm going to put a comment in here, define a big number. And well, there's several ways we could get this number. We could ask the user to enter it. They could use a text box and we could parse it, or they could use a track bar. And we could grab that number from a track bar, but just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to set it as a constant. Well, that's wrong. So another constant, and I'll just call that big number, and we'll just put big number in there, which we can change later on if we want to, and we will change it when we want to solve, when we want to test our program. Now, how are we going to work out all the factors of this big number? So we want to work out all the factors of 99, and there's likely to be quite a few. We know that 9 is going to be one of them, 11 is going to be one of them, 3 is probably a factor, so there's quite a few and we need to check them all. The question is how do we do that? Well, one approach we could use is to define the loop. So the loop is going to start at 99, go all the way down to 0, and check to see whether each number below 99 is a factor of 99. So let's take that approach. Okay, I'll just put a comment in, define a variable n, which is the current potential factor. So we're going to use n as the number that we're going to check. And since 99 is a factor of itself, we'll start in it at 99. So start it at big number, and then our loop will decrease. We'll go below, we'll go from that down to 0. Okay, so n is the number we're going to be checking to see if it's a factor, and if it is a factor, we'll display n inside the list box. Let's set up our loop. So iterate from, starting from n and going down to 0. So so I could use a for loop here, but I'm going to use a while loop this time. And the condition here is going to be n greater than 0. Okay, so we know that 0 is not a factor. We're not interested in negative numbers. We only want positive numbers. So what we're going to do is start n at big number, and we're going to keep iterating as long as n is greater than 0. When n finally reaches 0, we exit the loop, and this is the bit that happens after the loop. Okay. Okay, so there's probably nothing going to be down there, but I just put a comment there to show that it's after the loop. We could put more things there, but we're not going to. We don't really need to have that comment there. Okay, so in order to make this loop work, we're going to have to make sure that n actually does decrease. So at the end of the loop body, we want to put n minus minus. Okay, so this is essential. If we don't put this here, then n is never going to decrease. So this condition will always be true here. N will always be greater than 0. And then the loop will never end. Okay, that's called an infinite loop. And we can test that just by, let's just test this by setting big number to a small value like 5. and I'm going to throw a message box in here. So message box.show, and we're just going to show in. Okay, so all the loop's going to do is show in, and we're just going to confirm that it does in fact decrease by 1 on each iteration of the loop, and it starts at 5. So let's run that. I click the button and I get 5, 4. So message box has been called inside the loop body. So 3, 2, 1, and finished. Do it again. Get 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Finished. Okay. So the loop in is correctly being updated on each iteration of the loop. Now, if I forgot to put this here, what I get is an infinite loop. Okay. Let's imagine I run that. I forgot to put in minus minus there, and I get, yep, so I get the first message box popping up that n is 5, which is correct, but then I click OK. On the next iteration, n is still 5, so I haven't decreased n. I do it again, n is 5 again, n is 5 again, n is 5 again. This is going to go on forever. Doesn't matter how many times I click OK, n is always going to be 5. And in fact, I can't get away from it because my program's going to keep on popping up message boxes. That while loop's never going to stop, so I'm stuck in an infinite loop. So the only way to get out of here is to click the stop button, and hopefully that takes me back to the editor. So to make this program work, I have to have n minus minus there, and I could just add a warning, say, warning, don't forget this, or you'll get an infinite loop. Okay, that's just a reminder to you to always make sure that if you're using a while loop with a single variable like this, then you have some way of ensuring that the loop exits. Okay, so we don't actually want a message box in the loop body. What we actually want to do is check if n is a factor of big number. Let me put big number back to what it was before, 99. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's do a bit of a refresher on different types of division. We've got 2 different types of division. So there's integer division, e.g. 5/2, which gives you the number of times that 2 goes into 5 and ignores the remainder. So 5/2 will give you 2. Okay, if we have 9/2, that will give us 4. Okay, so 2 times 4 is 8, and it leaves a remainder of 1. The 1 is forgotten. We then have floating point. Why? Yeah, you call it floating point or double division. Let's just call it double, where at least one of those numbers is a double. So in this case, if we say take 9 and divide it by 2.0, 2.0 is a double, so that tells the computer to do a double division, not an integer division. So we get 4.5. So we can actually take advantage of this. And the reason why we can take advantage of this for working out whether a number is a factor or not is because if a number is a factor, then these 2 values should be the same. Okay, so what we can tell from this example is that 2 is not a factor of 9. On the other hand, if we change the 2 to 3, we get 9 divided by 3 goes 3 times, and 9 divided by 3.0 will give 3.0. So they're the same. 3 and 3.0 are the same. So what we can do is take our big number, divide it by n, in 2 ways using both of these different methods, and if they're the same, then n must be a factor. Okay, so let's try that. So how do we do that? We need an if statement. This is something that's going to be true or false. So we have to have an if statement, and an if statement needs to have an expression, and it needs to have something that happens if the expression is true. So let's work out what the expression is going to be. So how are we going to implement this? Well, we know what we've got big number. It's called big number, and we can do integer division on that just by going big number divided by n, because we know we've defined n to be an integer, and we've defined big number to be an integer. So if we do this, this is automatically going to be an integer. Okay, so if big number divided by n double equals, so this is checking to see if the two sides on the expression, within the expression, are the same, equals, and well, in order, so we've handled this case. This one's working okay, so this one is here. We next need to handle the double division case by turning one of these numbers into a double. So let's do that. That should be fairly straightforward, except that we need to convert n to a double. Okay, and we can do that with casting. So what we've done here is created a new expression where n, which is an integer, is cast to type double. Okay, so whenever we have parentheses in front of something and a type inside of it, that means cast, which essentially means change the type. So we're changing n into a double. So what we're saying is, if the integer, the result of doing an integer division between big number and n is the same as the result of doing a double division of big number and n, then do something. Okay. If you want it to be safe, you could put extra parentheses around each of these expressions just to make sure that they're separate, because we want to do the equality last. There's no harm in putting extra parentheses around. Okay, so if our program works properly, then if this expression is true, then if we ever reach this point, n must be a factor. Okay, let's put a comment there, n must be a factor. Okay, so this code block is only going to execute if n is a factor of big number. So let's now do something if n is a factor. So we're going to do something a bit different this time. I'm not sure if I've talked about list boxes and adding things to list boxes in previous videos, but we're going to add something to a list box. Basically, a list box is a list of strings. Okay, so each line is a string, and you can easily add items to the list. So there's two ways you can add strings to this list. One of them is to do it through the properties, and if we go down to the properties of the list box, we can see there's an items here. So I can click on this, and then I can enter anything I want. I can go sort of red, orange, New Zealand, so I can add strings. If I go OK, you can see that they appear. Okay, so I can either add items via the graphical user interface for the list box, or I can do it via programming. So I'm going to show you how to do it via programming next. Let's just clear those. Go back to here. So we need a string. It's going to be the current line. Now I could either define the string down here, or I could define it up here. It doesn't really matter. Let's put it up here for a change. So let's just define a variable to store the current line of the list box. So I'll define it here. It doesn't, I could do it in the loop, but it's just as good to do it up here. So let's just delete it from here. So we've defined this string called line, and every time I find a factor, what I want to do is create line and then add it to the list box. So let's set line. So we'll say something like n is a factor of big num. Okay, so there, our line is created. Now we need to add it to the list box. And the way we do it is just like with the GUI that I just showed you, we find the items property and we add the line to it. So let's find the list box factors dot items. So there we're saying find the items belonging to the list box factors, and we go dot, and if we click the dot we can see things that we can do to the list box. We can add, we can count, we can clear, we can remove, we can add range. So there's several things we can do. We're just going to add, and what we're going to add is line. So we're adding one line, one string to the list box. Let's run the program and give it a whirl. I hope it works. And what we get is 6 lines added to the list box. So it's telling us 99 is a factor of 99, 33 is a factor of 99, 11 is a factor of 99, and 9, 3, and 1 are factors of 99. So yeah, it seems to work okay. So it's found 6 factors of 99. Now let's change the number. What should we try? Let's try 40. Let's run that. And yeah, we've got 20, 40, 10, 8, 5, 4, 2, and 1. So that sounds right. Let's try a really big number, like, I don't know, 3,526. Just making that up. Run that. Factors. And there we've got the factors there: 3,526, 1,763, 86, 82, 43, 41, 2, and 1. So yes, our program seems to be working okay. But you might want to just double check to make sure that the factors that came up really are factors. So it's always a good idea to check your programs using a calculator or in some other way to make sure that your program is actually producing the correct output. Okay, so I'm going to make one more short video next on nested loops, so keep watching.